I've enjoyed the Mission Impossible films since the franchise started about 15 years ago. Obviously, the franchise that made a real star of Tom Cruise and was based on the 1960s television series. Now, what I like about Mission Impossible is every film is distinctly unique to a different director. Brian De Palma directed the first one, John Woo directed what I feel is an underrated second instalment, and J.J. Abrams from Lost and Alias fame directed the third one. Now this is now the fourth. This is called Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol and marks the live-action directional debut of Brad Bird, who has made his name with films like The Iron Giant and The Incredibles. And this is the first time he's tackled live-action, and that was one of the reasons that I went into this film not really knowing what to expect. Now I'd heard great things from other critics online and from just general reviews in newspapers. Everybody was raving over this film. So going in to see it, I was looking forward to it. I loved J.J. Abrams' third film. I thought that was a big step forward for the franchise and was excited to see what Brad Bird could do applying his, animation sensibilities to this franchise. And I have to say, it is a good film, but it's not what I expected whatsoever. It's a lot more old-fashioned than I was expecting. It's made like an old-fashioned espionage thriller, which for a series like this, isn't surprising. But after the third one was quite a modern film, a modern action film, and its pacing and everything like that, this one does feel a little bit more old-fashioned. And that's not to say it's it doesn't work for me. It's just not what I was expecting. Once I got into the groove of what Brad Bird was doing, I did really enjoy this movie quite a bit. So basically, the plot follows Tom Cruise's team, who include Simon Pegg and Jeremy Renner and a woman whose name I cannot remember. They have to basically stop the baddies from getting some nuclear warhead launch codes that could destroy the world. That's basically what it is. And basically they're framed for an attack at I think it's called the Kremlin building, and have to work alone because IMF, the organisation they work for, is disbanded. So that's why it's called Ghost Protocol. That's apparently what happens when it all hits the fan at the IMF. It disbands and the agents are on their own. So they have to kind of go off the grid and try and stop the end of the world. So it's got, the plot I found to be quite old-fashioned as well, similar to the plot of MI3, which, it's not bad, but it's not particularly reinventing the well-established wheel. I've come to expect a pretty good performance from Tom Cruise in this series. I thought he did really well in MI3 and managed to bring some real kind of pathos to the role, and he does continue to impress as Ethan Hunt in the fourth instalment, and he's definitely wearing the character like an old pair of shoes at this point, but he doesn't disappoint. He is pretty consistent. Simon Pegg does deliver a lot of the comic relief, some of which falls flat. Some is genuinely funny. Jeremy Renner is the newcomer, obviously from The Hurt Locker, and he's also taken over the Bourne franchise. So this is an action star who's, maybe when Tom Cruise decides he's finally too old for this series, Jeremy Renner will take over. What I really like about these actors is the interplay and the chemistry they have. Also, some of the dialogue, even though there's not much dialogue in this movie at all, a lot of the dialogue is quite realistic, and these characters talking like real people would talk in these situations. Like, how did you know that plan would work? Because it's stupid and ridiculous, and it shouldn't work, but it did. How did you know it would? Stuff like that. I really enjoyed the chemistry between all the actors. The only actor I thought kind of really it's not so much his fault because he wasn't given much to do. He's the bloke from the Swedish version of The Girl with Dragon Tattoo. He played Mikael Blomkvist. I forget his name. He plays the villain in this. He has about 5 minutes screen time in the whole film and really has nothing to do. He's a good actor. I really like him in The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, but he's just given nothing to do in this movie, which is a real shame because I feel like they wasted his potential. Whereas in the third film, Philip Seymour Hoffman really owned it as the villain, and so I thought that was a bit of a step back. Another step back in this film for me was the fact that the characters not only are they underdeveloped, they're just not developed at all. And what I liked about MI3 was it showed, you know, how this lifestyle can affect the personal lives of the agents and stuff. But there's none of that in this one. It's literally just set piece, set piece, set piece, set piece, with a bit of humour in between. There's no character development whatsoever, which I kind of missed. And narratively, I felt was a step back from the third film. Having said that, though, the action is nothing short of fantastic. Brad Bird, as I said, has only ever worked really in animation before, and I think that having that background, you know, he's created action scenes in the past where he hasn't had to worry about where he put the camera because it's all animated and it doesn't matter. So I think that sensibility of not knowing the limits of live action really provides him with a fresh eye at which to look at the action scenes in this movie, and some of them are just mesmerising. A lot of them, I get the impression, they are largely practical, the effects. There's quite a bit of CG in this, quite good CG as well. But it definitely is that the fact that he's never had to know his limits means that he doesn't remain grounded by the laws of physics, if that makes sense, and the action is very kind of inventive and almost whimsical. There's a standout sequence in a multi-storey car park where Ethan Hunt has to fight the main villain from level to level, which is really well done, and I think probably the standout sequence of the film, along with Tom Cruise having to climb the tallest building in the world, which is another standout sequence. Happens halfway through the film. You'd think that might be the climax, but that happens halfway through and is just amazing to watch. It really is. It's so tense and really well done. Another aspect of the film I really enjoyed was the fact that it does play on the reliance of gadgets in this role, and how a lot of the gadgets that they use in this movie do go wrong and do malfunction and do put their lives at risk. And, you know, it's about having to compensate for technology not being able to keep up. And I quite liked that aspect of the film and thought it was quite interesting that, you know, people who are reliant on gadgets in their work, when these gadgets fail, what will they do? And that aspect of the film I thought was really interesting, but it was just the lack of character development that I thought really kind of let it down. Now, it is a good film. It's a good action film. It's an action film where you can actually tell what's going on in the fight scenes and things like this. It's, in that regard, it is well done, well made. It's just, I don't think it's one of the best films of the year by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's probably one of the better blockbusters. It's more intelligent, witty and fun than a lot of blockbusters have been this year. But it's not one of the best films of the year by a long way for me. I did really enjoy it. As a fan of the franchise, I did enjoy it. I thought it is really good, but I didn't think it's as good as the third one. I'd probably put it as a second tier MI entry along with number one. So, you know, it is good, but it's not the best, and I don't think it's quite as good as all the critics have been making out. It's, like I said, it's a lot more old-fashioned. It's weird I say that because it has got a fast pace, but it's just the feel and the tone of the film is a lot more old-fashioned than the previous instalment, and it does kind of tie in as well to number one and stuff. And it's a good film for fans of the franchise. I think you'd really like it, and it's a good Friday night at the cinema for anybody who doesn't really care about Mission Impossible. It's a fun action movie, but it's not the shot of adrenaline that people seem to think it is. It's got some really standout sequences in it, very tense, very memorable, but the rest of the film isn't. I actually started to forget what happened in the movie about half an hour after I saw it. I saw it with the Lucha Media Geek here on YouTube and my girlfriend and also Lucha's wife as well. We all went to see it, and about half an hour after we got home, we couldn't remember most of it. So it's fluffy, it's fun, it's quick, it's a bit daft, but it's ultimately forgettable. But I would recommend it for fans of the franchise or anybody who wants a half-decent action movie. So that's Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.